She walked into the bank just like any other customer, unassuming, modest, with nothing more than a small purse hanging from her shoulder and a soft smile on her face. Her attire was simple, casual clothes and worn shoes that had clearly seen better days. She looked like someone you wouldn't think twice about, blending in with the crowd. No one gave her a second look. To the tellers behind the counter, she appeared like someone who might ask for directions or just take out a small amount of cash to get through the week. So when she calmly mentioned that she wanted to withdraw $500, the staff barely reacted, thinking it was a routine request. But soon, the murmurs began. The woman could feel the eyes on her, the smirks behind the counter. One young teller even snickered under her breath, nudging a colleague, as if this simple request was some kind of joke. To them, she was just another poor, insignificant woman, probably asking for more money than she could afford. However, instead of reacting with frustration or shame, the woman stood still, composed, her gaze sharp yet gentle. She didn't flinch. And then, with the softest of voices, she leaned in and said something that instantly silenced the room. She didn't want $500.
No.
She calmly requested $2 billion right on the spot. At first, the bank staff thought they must have misunderstood. Was she playing around? Was she confused? Or was she simply unaware of how things worked? But what happened next would turn this normal bank visit into a story that would haunt everyone present for years to come. Who was this woman really? What was her purpose? And why was she so prepared to shock everyone around her? Hold on tight, because what she revealed next completely changed the course of the day. Immediately, the bank manager was called over. He entered the room with a forced, nervous smile, the kind you wear when you're unsure whether someone is joking or genuinely serious. He asked the woman to repeat herself, just to be sure. Calmly, she nodded and repeated her request. "I'd like to withdraw $2 billion. People nearby froze. Conversations ceased. Phones were lowered. Even the security guard shifted in his seat. It was as if time itself had slowed down in that small lobby. The manager, trying his best to stay professional, asked her politely, "Ma'am, may I ask why?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her purse. Not for an ID, not for a checkbook, but for a small, folded envelope. It was creased, worn from being opened many times before. She handed it over to the manager without a word. He took it, opened it, and began reading. As he read, his expression shifted in an instant. The smile disappeared, replaced by a serious look that no one had seen before. His eyes flicked up to her face for the first time with no trace of amusement. But still, no one had any idea who this woman really was. She looked like someone with no wealth, no power. She wasn't carrying expensive accessories or making any noise. She had no bodyguards, no flashy handbag, no loud demands for attention, just quiet confidence and an increasing aura of mystery. The whispers resumed, but now they were no longer mocking. They were filled with curiosity, even fear. Who was this woman, and why was she here? The manager quietly asked her to step into his office. Without hesitation, she followed, her footsteps measured, her face unreadable. The curious eyes in the lobby stayed glued to her until the door clicked shut behind them. Inside, the tension was palpable. The envelope wasn't just a note. It was a document. A legal one, complete with signatures and seals. As the manager looked at the name printed at the bottom of the document, his hands began to tremble slightly. This was a name he had only ever heard in hushed tones at private meetings involving offshore accounts and high-level corporate secrets. He cleared his throat and asked her, this time more carefully, how she had come to possess this document. The woman looked at him, her voice soft yet firm, and said, "My husband left it for me." She paused, then continued, "He told me that if I was ever disrespected for being just a woman, I should remind people who I really am." Meanwhile, the story began to spread beyond the office. A few customers had started to recognize her face or think they did, connecting her to an old article about a business tycoon who had vanished years ago, leaving behind a mystery and an empire with no clear heir. But nobody had ever connected that empire to the quiet woman now sitting behind the closed door of the manager's office. The tellers who had once smirked were now whispering, their voices trembling. The young teller who had laughed earlier was pale, her eyes fixed on the door as if waiting for something to happen. One employee frantically searched through the bank's internal records, hoping to find a match to the woman's details. What she found made her sit back in shock. But still, no one understood her full purpose. Was she here to claim what was rightfully hers, or was she uncovering something the bank had worked hard to keep hidden? Inside the manager's office, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to almost electric. The manager sat across from the woman, holding the document as though it were fragile. The legal stamps, the offshore account details, the coded banking instructions, everything matched something he had only ever seen in top-secret files. What unsettled him most, however, was her calmness. She wasn't angry, nor was she demanding. She was just waiting, as though she already knew how this would end. The manager excused himself to make a phone call. But it wasn't just any phone call. He first dialed the regional director, then the legal department, and finally, an emergency number, one used only in extreme situations. His voice was low, but his growing panic was obvious. Staff nearby noticed his perspiration, the tight grip on his phone. This wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about something much bigger. Something hidden deep within the bank's walls. Down the hallway, the employee who had checked the bank's internal system stumbled upon something even more bizarre, an inactive account locked behind several layers of clearance, with the woman's name attached to it. It was flagged under special handling, and the linked numbers were anything but ordinary. The account wasn't just an isolated case. It was connected to multiple high-profile offshore transactions, huge transfers, and something labeled only as Project Gemini. Outside, word had quietly spread. A luxury black SUV was parked just beyond the doors. Two men in dark suits stepped out, surveying the lobby with practiced, emotionless gazes. Security noticed, but did not intervene. These men weren't from the bank, nor were they police. Yet their presence was commanding, suggesting they belonged there. The manager walked back into the office, his face pale and hands shaking. He looked at the woman, and with great hesitation, he said, "We may need to speak to someone from the board." The woman simply nodded, her expression calm. "I expected that," she said. She sat quietly as the manager worked to collect his thoughts, his nerves clearly rattled. Outside, the two suited men hadn't gone unnoticed. One of the senior staff quietly asked the security guard if anyone had called them, but no one could confirm. They weren't from the bank. They weren't police. But their stillness, their air of authority, suggested they were exactly where they were meant to be. Inside the office, the woman glanced at her watch, not in a hurry, but with purpose. "They'll be here soon," she said softly. The manager looked at her, confused. "Who?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she just waited.